My name is Erica Lehman, and I have been in Teller County since 2019. We started out as part-time Teller County residents, and every time we came here, we never wanted to leave. So in 2022, we became full-time Teller County residents. But I think I'll start with how I really got interested in mental health, because it's something that I've been studying, paying attention to, reading articles for a very, very long time. I know one of the biggest reasons that I was interested in mental health was because of my own childhood and my family of origin. When I was about 4 years old, my father was diagnosed with a terminal illness, and he was pretty much hospitalized until he died 3 years later when I was 7. And my mother completely fell apart. And so I had to raise myself in a lot of ways. My mother was extremely immersed in her own depression and stayed like that for almost 20 years. And then she finally came out of it for maybe 3 years, and it was like, wow, we can interact in a different way. And then her own mother passed away, and she went back into that deep depression, and she just never came out. Like, she just never became really functional again. It's kind of weird. When I was growing up, or actually even as an adult, I had it locked into my head that if you lost a parent, the other parent would become mentally incapacitated or emotionally incapacitated.
Because that's what you experienced.
Because that's what I experienced. Mm-hmm. And then I started meeting people who had lost a parent and their other parent was functional. It's like, oh, I didn't actually know this was possible. So, so I grew up with that, and with all of the challenges that come with being a small child, having to take care of yourself. The funny thing about consulting, which I did for about 20 years, as I started to talk to my fellow consultants, I started to hear that they had some pretty traumatic childhood experiences as well. And I realized that one of the things that makes you a really, really, really good consultant is being able to make difficult, demanding people happy. So I had that big aha moment, which was actually only a few years ago that I had that big aha moment. And I realized that in consulting, I was still replaying these childhood patterns of essentially trying to fix executive directors, boards of directors, organizations, but still trying to fix other people who were behaving in pretty dysfunctional ways, many of them. There was another thing that was happening also my whole life because of the type of family that I was growing up in. I definitely did not prioritize my own needs in any way, shape, or form. I think there are a lot of kids like me who have similar types of experiences where, for whatever reason, you're not getting the input at home You learn that if you do really well in school, you get a lot of attention from your teachers. So I learned to be a star student, and just work myself to the bone to perform. And so, graduate school, getting a PhD, having an intense consulting career, that all fit. It all fit. It was all very natural to me to work and work and work and not take breaks, not take vacations, not pay attention to being, just always pushing through, always ignoring what I was feeling inside. Definitely if it was emotional, definitely ignoring that, but also ignoring physical signs of fatigue. And so it all came to a head in 2021. I was so stressed and I had absolutely no idea what to do. And one day I simply passed out. And I hit my head and I had a traumatic brain injury. And that was stress. Like, I had every test run possible. There was no medical reason for me to just... My body had been sending me messages and I'd been ignoring them. And so this time my body said, oh, you're done. And it was really significant. I damaged a nerve in my left eye. So my left eye did this, which meant that I had double vision. I had the short-term memory of a goldfish. I left our back door open in a snowstorm. I got lost in the grocery store. Like, I couldn't find my husband at the checkout next to where I was. I couldn't get a fork into food because I couldn't see. I couldn't get a credit card into an ATM, or, into pay anything because my vision was so bad. And I couldn't even listen to podcasts because it was too much for my brain. I couldn't read anything. And it took me 9 months to
a long time.
Get my memory and my vision and my brain back. I had to wear special glasses for double vision. I had to do occupational therapy. I had to do physical therapy, and I had to do cognitive therapy to work on, first of all, getting my memory back. Second of all, then getting my endurance back so I could actually work. I also, after my recovery got to a certain point, then I was also working with a mental health therapist too, to help navigate everything. But part of what I needed to navigate with the therapist was this realization of how dysfunctionally I had been living. And even running my business, my staff did not work more than 40 hours a week. And if there was more work that needed to be done, I was the one doing it. If someone didn't get something done on time, well, I was the one who'd stay till 1 a.m. to get it done. One of the things that whole injury, it was such a blessing on so many levels, because when I all of a sudden couldn't work, there was no one at my company to step in, because I had not built people's skills in a way that they could operate independently. So in this 9 months of reflection that I had, I realized I had to do things differently. But, I didn't know how long it was going to take for me to be able to do some of this other stuff, to have more endurance on the computer, to be able to drive. I was continuing working with a cognitive therapist even when I was back at work, just to work on building my endurance. But there was a part of me that was saying, at my age and position in life, probably I should not be writing statistical code anymore. So I set out trying to figure out how I knew I had to do things differently, and I didn't know how. One of the big things that I learned that I had been in denial about this whole time is that I was a full-blown, certifiable workaholic. And I never really identified with that. My whole life I had this inner critic. I think a lot of us have an inner critic. I had to do my own personal work and learn where that inner critic came from, and also learn how to combat the inner critic. And that was when I put 2 and 2 together. And I realized that work for some people is a stress response. And working more is a more stress response. And so
it perpetuates.
It perpetuates. And it's that same thing, right? That pattern I learned as a kid, right? Things at home, not great. My mom, totally unpredictable. Sometimes just volatile out of nowhere. And so stress at home. Well, okay, I knew if I got this done and I did a really good job, I would get kudos from the teacher, and I probably would have the best grade in the entire class, blah, blah, blah. And so I got into that pattern. And so work became a stress response. So I'd be worried, we don't have enough money. Okay, I'm going to work harder. Things aren't going so well with my spouse or whatever. Okay, going to work harder. Things aren't going well at work. Well, I'm going to work harder. Really, anytime, anything, any challenging emotion, I just funneled that into work. And that sounded, it's like, well, I'm not drinking. I'm not using drugs. I'm not overeating.
Right, it could be worse.
Could be worse, right? Mm-hmm. But it's still, just like any other ism, it still interfered with my relationships. I was not mentally present with my kids when they were growing up a lot of the time. And not mentally present with my husband either. So the walk back from workaholism has been super interesting to me, because initially it's like, oh, well, this is easy. I'm just not going to work so much, right? And that works for a while. But the impulses and the cravings, it's no different, I think. It's probably no different from the cravings for a drug or a drink or food. Things are stressful. I have self-doubt, right? The critic, that inner critic comes up. I have self-doubt, and my first impulse is, where's my to-do list? Like, I'm going to tell that inner critic that I'm worthwhile because I'm going to get 10 more things knocked off. Like, I realized that was the subconscious thing going on in my head. It wasn't at the conscious level, but I believed that if I just worked harder, if I just did more work, that I could shut that inner critic up. As I was learning about this inner critic and where it came from, I started actually paying attention to, when did that inner critic come up? And interestingly enough, I discovered that the inner critic would often pop up if I was overworking.
Really?
Yes.
So it was a stress response.
It was a stress response. The inner critic was actually a stress response. And then I was adding more stress. So then I started learning, okay, when I hear the inner critic, it means stop working now. And so I would do that instead of working more. And this is just something, this is all like within the last year. So this is new territory for me. But I would hear that inner critic and I would say, okay, I'm going to stop. No more work. I'm just going to go do something relaxing, whatever that is. No more work. I would notice the physical signs. And I'd say, okay, now it's time to stop. I'm getting tired. And I know I have this impulse to just push through. But I'm not. I'm going to stop. I'm going to not push through. Do I always get it right? No. Am I completely there? Do I not relapse? No. But am I a lot more aware now? Absolutely, yes.